Hello, I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley.
And I'm her daughter, Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Heidi and I want to welcome you to Open to Hope Conversations, the podcast.
We believe that the greatest gift you can give yourself after a loss is hope, using this moment to connect with others who have not only survived but thrived.
So let's get started. Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Well, Heidi, we're going to be interviewing a really remarkable lady today who's done so much good in the world of grief and loss. And we're going to talk about life after the death of a partner today. You want to introduce our guest, Heidi?
Sure, Mom. And I'd like to say up front, well, first of all, let's talk about how we had her on our cable show. And you all were talking about a life after the death of a partner. And you have recently written a book.
I wrote the book with my partner, yes, indeed. And we were talking on the cable show about dating after loss. And the book is called Open to Love, The Secrets of Senior Dating. And I wrote it with my fiance, Dr. Frank Powers. So thanks for introducing that, Heidi, and people can get it on Amazon.
Absolutely. So today, as you said, Mom, we will be talking about life after the death of a partner. And our guest is Dawn Nargi, and she is the co-founder of the W Connection. She became a widow and a new mother after the death of her husband in 2009. So she became a widow and a new mother. She has been featured in prestigious media outlets and is currently writing her own memoir. Welcome to the podcast, Dawn.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
I would love to have you tell our audience about your story because, it's pretty compelling and heart-wrenching, but also inspiring.
I always start my story, my husband and I were married a couple of years and we just bought an apartment on the Upper West Side, actually, this apartment. And
Wow, nice.
yeah, and we were thrilled. It's
Mhm.
interesting how, happy you can be in 1 minute and how life changes. We bought this apartment. It was 2 bedrooms, in New York. It's amazing to have 2 bedrooms. So we went, what are we going to do? Let's try and have a baby. We immediately became pregnant. My son, William, was born 2 months premature. So he spent 1 month in neonatal intensive care. And when we came out of the NICU, my husband, Norman, was still experiencing what I thought was sympathy pains. And I said something nice, like everybody would say, like, get to the doctor, I need your help, and he went to the doctor. We found out he had spots in his liver, kidney, spleen. It was cancer. He was told he would live 15 years and he died 2 months later when my son William was just 3 months old. So I became a new mom and a new widow within a couple of months of each other.
That's a lot. So
Yeah.
your child was in the NICU and had just come out not that long after your husband died, it sounds like.
Yeah, my child was in the NICU, and again, it's interesting how life changes, right? We had William, it was wonderful. Then he was in the NICU, and it was scary for a little bit, and then we got out, and I thought everything was going to be great, but unfortunately, we found out he had cancer. He died very quickly. He died within 2 months of being diagnosed. They really thought that he would have 15 years to live, but he died very quickly.
So I'm wondering, here you are with the newborn and you're grieving significantly. Did you have to put your grief almost on a shelf and kind of not completely address it because you had a newborn, or what did that look like?
It's very interesting. I am really so impressed with women, all women who go through this, and the men as well, but women are interesting, right? We just kind of forge ahead.
Yeah.
We go, okay, I think this is challenging, but I think you don't realize until you talk to other widows, other women that have gone through this, like, wow, this is really, really hard. The crazy thing is that I was still on maternity leave. And my employer was wonderful. They called me up and they were like, what do you need? And we figured out that I would come back in in 3 more months, that I would need 3 more months. And once I went back to my job, I started to compartmentalize, right? When I was mom, I tried to be 100% mom. When I was at work, I tried to be 100% at work.
You know, with a baby who's been born premature, they really require a lot of attention at home, don't they? And getting up at night and all that kind of thing.
My son said to me one day, which was really sweet. He said it when he was young. And I was like, you know what, William? I said, we sometimes don't know. My son was small. He was 2 pounds, 14 ounces, but he was breathing on his own. I remember the neonatologist saying, breathing on his own, 32 weeks. There's so much we don't know about prematurity. Really interesting statement. And I went, okay. And my son once said to me, he goes, Mama, I came early to see Daddy Norman.
Oh,
Oh,
that is so touching.
it
Whoa.
is. It is
Whoa.
really touching.
So how long was your husband with your son, William, until he died?
Yeah, it was just William was 3 months old. You know, but again, my husband was experiencing again what I thought were sympathy pains, and he was in a lot of pain during my pregnancy and after. And I think it was very challenging for him to be a dad, right? Because of the pain and because knowing that he wasn't going to be here, that there were chance he wasn't
Right.
going to survive this.
I know you've talked a bit about how you have a hearing problem, and so you trained your dog. Talk about that.
Yeah. So, you know, I've always been an active volunteer, whether doing the work I do with widows or before widows, I used to volunteer for animal care and control, and I became a certified pet dog trainer. So I actually can
Wow.
train dogs, and my role was to help people keep dogs in the home, right? Train them at a certain behavior so the dogs would stay in the home. So when Norm died, you know, I had this realization that I was not going to hear the baby. So I completely deaf when I do not have my devices on. I wear a hearing aid on this side and a cochlear implant on my left.
Mhm.
And when the devices are off, I don't hear. So I had a lot of fear that, you know, a newborn, you know, still only just about 4 pounds was going to cry and I wasn't going to hear him. So my dog's job, he became trained to wake me up when the baby was crying or wake me up if the smoke alarm went off, you know, and he did that by licking my hand or licking my face.
Now,
Wow, that's
how do you
amazing.
train a dog to do that?
You know, all of it is, you know, with that, it's called a shaping behavior. So what you would do is the dog would lick, you would give a treat. Dog would lick, you would do a treat. And then you would add the baby crying in. So this one you would do with a shaping behavior and you would start to say, ooh, there's a lick. Let's encourage that. And let's encourage that while the baby is crying. And it was almost like, I mean, for our dog lovers out there, I mean, it really felt like Kenyon took his role seriously. Like he really just went, okay, we're going to be partners in this, and I'm going to help you raise this child. And there's so many photos with my son just leaning all over his dog.
That's amazing.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. That is. So I assume the dog is not with you still, or it is?
Yeah, so Canyon died in 2016, and as my mom put it, she said, you know, he waited until you were ready. You know, I think he's
Wow.
probably looking at me. It's like, is she going to handle this yet? When can I go? But he really was, you know, just always there for my son William.
How old was your son William when your dog died?
So let's see. So Kenyon was, yeah, he was still young. So
Okay.
probably about seven, eight.
Yeah. Because, you know, we've talked with a lot of people about pet loss, and the pets are also oftentimes a reminder and extension of the person that died if they were in
Yes,
the family at that point.
absolutely.
And I think that pet loss is often very minimized by society. It's like, we'll just go out and get another dog, you
Right.
know, or it's only an animal. And like you're showing, that animal and that unconditional positive regard and that training helped you so much when your husband died.
Absolutely. And I always say, like, you know, if I had, you know, people ask me sometimes, do you just have the one child? I'm like, yes, I wanted three, but I just had the one. And, you know, my dog was my son's brother, you know, that's the
Yes.
way I refer to him. And, you know, pet loss, the interesting thing, you know, I was given advice, and you both could tell me, to be very honest with William. So I am very honest with things that are going on. So when Canyon the dog was diagnosed with cancer, I told William, and I said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to have surgery. And, you know, Canyon lived a couple of years longer, but still it was a shock when Canyon died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the most difficult thing about not having a spouse when you had and having a young child?
Oh my gosh, so funny, because it's like changing diapers, picking up dog poop. You know, there was so much to do, right?
Yeah.
I think, you know, I remember we talk about in W Connection dealing with difficult emotions. And I never had the emotion of envy. Like, I would never look at other people before I was widowed and go, wow, I really want that. And I remember going into a restaurant with my son and seeing a husband and wife, and the husband was holding on to the whatever it is, the car seat, and the wife was doing something else. And there I was all by myself. And I just remember looking at them, feeling so much envy and like, wow, I'm doing this all on my own. So it was, you know, it's everything from waking up in the middle of the night to providing all the income for the household. You know, I was working, still am working a really difficult job. You know, so I think there's so many facets of it, Heidi, that are difficult, right?
Is that why one of the reasons you decided to start W Connection?
Yeah, I think what happened. So I did my bereavement work at Gilda's Club, and Gilda's Club was amazing. I mean, it really was for bereavement. I would go after a full day at the office, and I would just sit there and I would cry. You know, they'd get to me and I couldn't even get a sentence out, right? It was the only place, you know, when we talk about that compartmentalizing, it was the only place where I could just lose it. And I would barely get out a sentence. And I did that for about 8 months. And at some point they said, okay, you're done. You've done your bereavement work. And I left and I went, I'm not done. You know, I don't know how to pay for this apartment on my own. I don't know how to do this job that I have on my own. I don't know how to raise this baby. I don't know how I'm going to walk the dog at night after I get the baby ready for bed. So there were so many things that I still needed to figure out. And what I realized was that the best advice came from other widows. Like, other widows would go, hey, this is what I did. Or, you know, you can't ask for help, you know, learn how to ask for help. So that's the reason why I started the W Connection.
Yeah. When did you first start it, and who was in the group, and how did it begin?
So I started it in, so my husband died in 2008. In 2009, we were incorporated, the end of 2009.
Wow.
And I started it with a colleague named Ellen Camp. Ellen has since died of ovarian cancer, very sadly. And she was my mentor for work. And she was probably 15 years my senior. She didn't have any children. I had a newborn, but she was widowed a year before me. And she was the first person that got it. And she goes, we have to talk. And she and I realized that this connection that we shared was very powerful. And then we started to bring in other widows. And then we had our first meeting on the Upper West Side in 2010, actually, in this apartment.
Wow. Did anybody, because you were young, did anybody minimize your loss and say things like, well, at least you have a child. Well, at least you're young. Well, at least you can get married again. Well, at least you can find somebody else.
You know, it's very interesting, Heidi. I say that I'm going to flip that a little bit, because sometimes people will say, you know, it's harder for me because, right? So
Mhm.
I could say it's harder for me because, you know, financially, my income dropped by half, right? The household income dropped by half. It's harder for me because I have a newborn, you know, but you can also say that another way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Say, wow, I'm so glad I have my son. I'm so glad I have a job that's bringing in good money. So some people did say it, but also it's what we say to ourselves as well, right? So
Mm-hmm.
um I did get that every day. Don't worry, you're young. You could get married again. That will solve everything. So I did
Right.
hear that, and then, you know, more importantly, I find it interesting about what we say to ourselves, and
Yeah.
you know, I think gratitude uh, for those things you have is so powerful, right? And I was grateful that I had a newborn. I also knew it was harder, but I was very grateful. I was grateful I had an apartment, um, but I also knew it was going to be hard to pay the mortgage.
A lot of what I'm hearing from you is peer support is really important. Tell us about the W Connection.
We are now a national organization. We also have a couple of women in Australia, a couple of women in Canada, and a couple of women in England. So I don't know if that makes us international yet, but it's nice to know that we can reach beyond our physical doors. So we are a virtual organization. And then about a year ago, we started to reopen our doors in an in-person way. And we started what's called clubs. So we have 6 of those. They're a little bit different than what our chapters were. You know, so the way the W Connection works is every month there is a topic or a theme. So for instance, this month is dealing with difficult emotions.
Hmm.
So in our peer-led topic meetings, we talk about guilt, we talk about envy, we talk about fear. And what we say is, you know, those emotions are okay to have, right? Sometimes people just say, you know, you're a widow, you're supposed to be sad. That's the allowable emotion. You know, this anger we're
Yeah.
not supposed to have, or this fear we're not supposed to have, or this guilt we're not supposed to have. So what we say is those emotions are allowable, but if they are holding us back, let's figure out how to release them and move forward. Now, the interesting thing, while we say in the W Connection there is no timeline for widows, we know that there is a journey, right? So peer-led topic meeting, post-bereavement, we're dealing with difficult emotions, and we're talking about guilt, anger, fear. We also have what's called W Chat, and those are for widows who are further along. But the difficult emotion that's there is that emotion of joy, right? I'm feeling joy. Well, my husband didn't get to feel joy. My husband didn't.
Mhm.
And then we say, okay, again, it's an okay emotion, but if it's holding you back, what can we do? Um, so the meetings are, I am a facilitator. You know, I'm not a trained therapist. So what we do is we open up the topic, and then we let women speak. And then
Mhm.
somebody might share that story that I shared about envy. And they might say, oh my gosh, me too. Okay, I get it. It's there. Okay, I feel bad about it, but you know what? Other people are feeling that too. So it's really just nobody saying this is how you do it, but open up the topic and the meeting, and then women share with each other. And you might resonate with one thing from that meeting, you might resonate with 3 things from that meeting. So again, these meetings bring in peer support and shared strategies.
Great. Well, it sounds
Love it.
wonderful. How do I find you? I just on the internet, the W Connection.
Yep, we're a 501c3, so it's wconnection.org. And we have what's called, you know, a free information session. So there's a way to try us out and see if you like what we do. You know, there's different support for different people. You know, we always talk about complementary support. We love to be part of the ecosystem of loss, right? So, we refer out to therapists where needed. We talk about Open to Hope. We talk about other organizations. So we have people, if they want to join, they just join. It's a very nominal fee. We keep costs very low so that all women can join. We're a member-based organization. And we also have a free information session for those women who want to try us out first.
Oh, thank you, Dawn. And thank you so much for your inspiration and wonderful what you've done with the W Connection. And if you want to see more of Dawn, talk a little bit more about her relationship, join Dr. Frank Powers and I. You can go to the Golden Dating Doctors and see our television show with her. So thank you so much for being on today. You're amazing.
Thank you both. I'm so impressed by the work that you both do as well. And I'm glad to be a part of this any way I can.
I agree with my mother, Dawn. It's phenomenal what you've done and all the women that you've connected with and helped again and helped find hope. And you are an inspiration. You can find hope after loss. I mean, you had a lot of adversity when your husband died, but you found your way out of the darkness. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you both.
And we want to thank everybody for joining us on the show today. And Heidi and I always want to remind you that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own, and God bless.
I'm Dr. Heidi Horsley. You have been listening to Open to Hope, the podcast. You can follow Open to Hope on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. To learn more, visit us at opentohope.com and go to Apple Podcasts to subscribe.
I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley. Join us again next week for another Open to Hope conversation, where we invite you to lean on our hope until you find your own.